With me are now two youth representatives. Tasnim, you are from the UK, and Miroslav, you are from Slovakia. There has just been a new report published on radicalisation in Europe's cities and regions, and you, Tasnim, went through it and you have some criticism.
Yeah, I just found it a bit, if it's the right word, a bit contradictory about freedom of speech and the fact that we shouldn't discuss about the reasons for this terrorist attack, because if we don't discuss the causes, then we can't find the solutions to radicalisation. So it defeats the whole idea of open discussion. We need to be able to talk about the causes, all kinds of causes, social exclusion, foreign policy. I mean, these are all going to be reasons, and if we want to progress as a society, then we need to talk about everything.
Talking about the recent terror attacks in Paris and in Copenhagen in the last weeks, you're living as a daughter of two Bengali immigrants in the UK. Has there been a more hostile atmosphere in the country?
When you take in consideration the media and how population-wise there's only 5% of Muslims, you get a bit surprised seeing Muslims in the media all day, even though we're only 5% of the population. So you see this media bias already, and that is a bit uncomfortable, because the area I live in is very multicultural, and we all get along fine. But then you have right-wing fascist groups that are rising, that also have anti-Jewish sentiments, and now Islamophobia as well, to fight against this idea of the war on terror and radicalisation, blaming normal Muslim families who are loyal to the law and who just want to get on with our lives, who are integrated into society. So we're being demonised by the media, and people are being really irrational to certain marginalised groups and societies, because we're being marginalised because of this, because the media is putting ideas into the heads of people who just watch the news, just read newspapers and believe everything they hear. So there isn't any control of the media reporting the truth and representing the population.
Even in Slovakia, where there is only a small Muslim population, it seems to be a very marginalized group of people, because some rights are difficult to access.
Well, it is so because we have it in our law that, for example, there is possibility for a Muslim community to establish a mosque, but they need, for example, 20,000 signatures, and it's impossible for them to achieve it because there are just 5,000 in Slovakia. So it's pretty awkward law,
yeah,
related to the faith.
Mm-hmm. So. Very contradictory. You are also about to finish your PhD in political sciences, where you focus on foreign fighters. How is it possible that Europeans go into war in other countries?
There are different motivation factors, but you cannot say that there are some. You can assume that in general it's because of this or in this or in this. Radicalization is a very dynamic process. It's not a concrete mechanism. I don't think that there is any possibility to come up with something how to fight radicalization, because it's not about marginalization of the communities, it's not about Muslims, it's not about Roma people, it's about people that are searching some deeper values. For example, they would like to promote their family, pride for the family, to secure income for their families, and so there are many factors that affect the radicalization.
Mm-hmm. Question to both of you: how can cities and regions, and also the work in the Congress, contribute to a anti-radicalization of Europeans?
By treating all citizens equally. Like, we had the concept of freedom of expression, but there seems to be a display of double standards, because there can never really be a true freedom of speech, because there are barriers everywhere. Within law there's certain things you can't say. You can't incite hatred, for example, to Jews. If you did, everyone would be like, come on, have you forgotten World War II? But it's starting with religions now. Like, Islam's pretty new, and people seem to justify it because Muslims have been dehumanized, and everyone just sees on the news, well, they're radicals, they're evil, they want jihad, they want Sharia law, even though that's not true, because I'm standing here, I'm pretty nice, you know what I mean? But yeah, we have that problem, and the idea is just that we be fair and we have a responsible freedom of speech, where if I want to criticize you, I do it with good manners. I don't shout at you and tell you to die. Because after the Charlie Hebdo attack, there was a Twitter trend called "Kill All Muslims." I mean, how can you have something so evil, kill all Muslims? I mean, we're a group of 1 point something billion in the world. We're the second the largest religion in the world. There's a lot of us. We're not all evil. So that's something people need to take into account. We're all human. We're all equal in the sense that, you know, we're all, you know, a part of the same species, the human species.
Well, there is big nationalist propaganda going around Europe, and it means that people usually change the notions of radicalization and terrorism, and both notions are completely different because the one who is radical, it doesn't mean that he needs to become a terrorist in the end, you know. He just wants to promote his opinions, and he used the political way to do it. So, but how to say it?
I kind of understand. You mean you can be extreme.
Yes.
In your group. I mean, like, you have a right-wing fascist person who'll go around beating up other kind of groups, social groups, but they won't ever be called a radical or a terrorist. The law really doesn't, you know, do much to them. But when it's a Muslim, and they seem extreme and they voice their views in, you know, this so-called freedom of speech, they can still get arrested. They can still get marginalised, even though they're using that right. So there is a distinction between being extreme and then being, you know, terrorist extreme, like where you'd actually go out and do these kind of things. Because you might have radical political views, but you might not actually practice some crazy views. So if you did want to put radicals in jail, you need to apply it to every single group. You need to apply it to far-right fascist groups, like the EDL members in the UK. They're really dangerous, and, you know, I could be on the street and they could attack me, because this is the kind of things that happens to Muslims and Jews if they're walking down the street and they get attacked. It doesn't really make the news unless ethnic minorities are doing something bad. It's like the media, and you could say the politicians are creating social tensions within minorities, if you know what I mean. And these tensions are unreasonable. The media, they label ethnic minorities by their name. Like, when you had Jimmy Savile, you never hear, oh, white guy is a paedophile. You wouldn't see that. But when you see a Muslim do it, when you see a black person do it, when you see a Jewish person do it, you'll always have that label on them, because that's how they're defined, and it kind of demonises that group. And if you read it, I mean, can you really blame some people if they read in the newspaper every day and see Muslim does this, black person does this, think these are a bad group of people? This is what you're going to naturally think. And the media has such a powerful responsibility, because people trust the media, and it does need to be regulated in the sense, yes, it should be free, but it should speak the truth. It shouldn't lie, because we have an example. This is the most famous case in the UK, where it was in the Daily Mail. They're, you know, really famous for lying, but the title was "Muslims Get Offended by Bacon Smell." So the cafe gets planning permission denied for their fan. Now, the funny thing is, Muslims, the people who complained were named Sarah and Graham Lee. They were Muslim, and the person frying the bacon was Turkish, and he was Muslim. He was the wife of the white woman. This is how they twisted the title. So immediately right-wing fascist group and people reading it would think, oh, these Muslims, what's wrong with us eating bacon? So they create these tensions on purpose, especially the Daily Mail is one example.
So we see now, obviously, problems, as you say, in the media and also in politics. Do you have any examples of good practice in mind of how these stereotypes and these threatening whole communities can be fought against?
Dialogue is the key. It's just talking. Like I said, in my area, it's multicultural. In places where there's a lot of integration, everyone's fine. But in places where there is hardly any ethnic minorities, like the EDL, they come from areas where they're mostly in an area where there's mostly, you know, their own group of people, mostly, say, white people, fascist people, if you know what I mean. they're the people who hate multiculturalism. They blame their jobs. Immigrants are stealing our jobs, even though they're in an area where there is no immigrants. So it doesn't really make sense, but they're being biased. You know, the media bias is getting to them. But in an area where everyone gets along, because every single person that I've come across, they understand me as a Muslim, that I'm human. But there could be someone on the internet that writes a horrible comment. They've never met a Muslim, they've never met a black person. They just think they have these racist sentiments and think we're all evil as ethnic minorities, but they've never met us. And what we really need to do is integrate, and the media has a responsibility in showing a fair representation, showing good Muslim people, that if a Muslim does do something good, that the label is used. If a black person does something good, that the label is used, because the label isn't used in good context. Like, there were 2 universities who did a study in the UK. Every 21 times something bad is mentioned about Muslims, negative labels are used, like terrorist, radical, but for every 21 times only one good thing is attached to the label Muslim, and that kind of shows you what's going on. Even in this report, it mentions the policeman who died in the Charlie Hebdo attack was Muslim. The label isn't being used in this report either, so it's taking away from the fact that a Muslim policeman died, and it's taking away from the fact that with the attack on the Jews, that a Muslim man saved them by locking him in the refrigerator, if you remember that. So he actually said that's not mentioned. These good things are never mentioned. These heroic things aren't really shown in the media as much as the bad. So even if it is talked about, the bad stuff is always drawn over scale. It's blown out of proportion compared to the good stuff. Because like I said, we're like 1.3 billion people, and it goes the same with other ethnic minorities, other small groups. It's disproportionate what's being shown, and it's just creating social tensions.
Should we at all connect terms such as religion or ethnicities to good and bad things? Should it play a role in daily life that someone shot people because he was a Muslim, or someone saved other ones and he was Muslim?
The term shouldn't be used at all in reality, but because you get the term used so much in a negative sense and not in the positive sense, it should be equal. But what's preferable is that we all just see each other as human and use our names. That's what we should do. We shouldn't think, oh, he's Muslim, that's why he did that. Oh, he's from this country, that's why he did that. It should be because of who we are as individuals.
It's because we created an issue of orientalization, we created an issue of inequality, and most of all, we created an issue of the third world, that we, the Western civilization, are something more than the perhaps Muslim civilization, and that's why we created a second-class citizenship in Europe. That's the problem, because we are creating prejudices, and it's not very good, because then the people are thinking, all right, we have come here to Europe because they guaranteed us democracy, human rights, and the state of law, but in the end we don't feel it. So what should I do? I don't have a job, I don't have reached the studies, I don't have income. I will go and fight for the Islamic State because they guarantee me faith, and that's everything what matters for me. So it's like that.
I think the world is definitely complicated, and it's still embedded in its history. Like, you have to discuss history because it's sustaining the present. I mean, racism still exists because of colonization in the past, because that whole ideology was used to degrade the Africans, so it would be easier to, demonize them, make them look less than human, and then it's easier to enslave them. And obviously that type of society that's been created, it's still affecting today, the present. Like the concept of Orientalism that he was talking about, it is affecting how people see other people in other countries, because we're different. But with integration, that can all be solved, and with education, because both of us and other delegates, other young people, when we come together and we have a political education, because political education is so important. When you know the truth, when you know the history about the world, and when you meet people, you understand what the truth is, and you understand that if there is a social group that are extreme, there's social causes to it. If there is a social group that's good, there's social causes to it, but you can't generalize because people are individuals.
Tasnim, Miroslav, thank you for these insights.
Thank you very much.